Hey everyone! So this video is intended to follow the welcome video. So there's a short welcome video that goes through how to log in, some basics about Magic School. So this video is intended to follow that one. If you have not done that yet, I recommend going back, making sure you're able to log in and that you took the tour of Magic School. We are going to start this now by looking at the dashboard of Magic School, kind of get a sense of what the homepage looks like, and then we're going to dive into some of the specifics about how the tools work. Once we get a chance to kind of dig through one or two of those, we're going to go through a little bit about what AI prompting is. That's how you can ask Raina, the built-in assistant, a question. And then the end of this video is going to leave some time for you to go ahead and do a scavenger hunt to find some different items, and I'll follow up with where those items were. I have faith that you will all be very successful on that scavenger hunt, but just in case. I will post this training document alongside the video, so if you do need to be able to see this a little bit bigger, you're going to be able to do that. So let's talk a little bit about the Magic School platform. The platform itself has a dashboard with over 60 different tools. They have a lot of different areas that you're able to use to help kind of narrow that down. There's 60 tools, but you're definitely not going to use all 60 of them. So I'm going to hop into Magic School here. Here is our platform. You can see there's already quite a bit here. I know that says Magic Student over there. Don't panic. We are not using Magic Student right now. We're just working with staff, but just wanted to point that out. So on the dashboard, the top part gives you a lot of different ways to look at the categories. So if you're trying to figure out what you need to do, if you need a communication tool, it can help filter by those. If you're looking for a community tool, kind of something that's a fun way to work with others, I really like that it has a custom thank you note, although my personal favorite, because I am such a dork, is the teacher jokes. They're like really bad dad jokes. I love it. So up here, you're able to pick different categories. I point that out, one, so you can use it, but two, so if all of a sudden your tools aren't all there and you're missing some, you know where you might have accidentally clicked. Right next to those categories is the search bar. If there's something you know you're looking for, you really want help, maybe with a quiz, I can try searching. That one isn't there, but let's try rubric instead. Oh, there we go. I'm able to find that tool quicker. To be honest, I don't find the search function that helpful, but it's there, so I thought I would mention it. On your middle area, this is where all of those tools live. So as I mentioned, there's over 60 of them, and they're always adding more. One of the things you can do over here is sort A to Z, just so you can see them in order, but I really like to leave it on most popular so that I'm able to see kind of what other people are using a lot. Up above that is where your favorites are. When you created your account, it tried to guess what your favorites might be, so it starred a few for you. You don't have to keep those. You can uncheck the star and it will remove it from favorites. So if you want something to be there, multiple choice assessments, because I looked for the word quiz, but it liked multiple choice assessment, then you can press the star and that will bring it to the top. Since there are so many tools, I find it really helpful to be able to star the ones you like. That way you have your ones at the top and everything else below. We're going to hop into one of those tools shortly, but there's another area I would like to show you. On the left, there's the magic tools, which is where you are. There's Raina. We're going to come back to her. There is your output history. Now that's what I really like, is it actually keeps your output history. So if you create something and you didn't save it, maybe you created like the best teacher joke ever and you didn't write it down, then you can go back to your output history and it will keep all of your output history. So even if you made that teacher joke at the very beginning of our training and it's a year from now, you will be able to scroll back and get it. The ones below are some different ways to see more about Magic. You'll see some of those resources later, so you don't need to worry about that. I know it does say upgrade, but if you click on it, it's going to tell you you're already on the top plan, so you really can't upgrade any further. I'm going to go back to my magic tools here. One last thing I'll point out down in the bottom corner is your settings. So if you needed to change anything on your profile, maybe you misspelled your name, I don't know how, but maybe something's wrong on there, you can do that. Or the thing that I really like is the ability to take a tour. So that same tour that you started with, and I know I'm so sorry my Philly accent continues to come through on that one. I will work on saying the word tour. Although at this point, I think I need to kind of give up and accept this is just how I say it. Anyhow, take the tour. That is one of the options that will take you back to that original tour you just did, where it's like a 14-step thing and kind of walks you through some of it. So maybe you haven't seen it for a while and you don't get a chance to use it for a bit. That's a great place to go back to kind of get some help from there. All right, so now that we know the basics of our dashboard, let's go back to that presentation to see, did we make it through everything? Yep, we talked about the default of the dashboard, how it's set up. We talked about our categories. I mentioned the search bar, and you saw kind of the difficulty I had with the search bar. I wanted to use the word quiz. It wanted to use the word multiple choice assessment, which is why I don't use the search bar, but maybe you'll get really good with it. And then the last one is to make sure you're starring your favorite tools. Okay, now this next part's a little tricky because we're going to go back and forth a little bit, so hang with me, but we're going to go through and talk about what's there on the screen when you're using one of their tools. So they've got some really helpful built-in features. I'm going to do the same one that they had up on the screen just to make life easy, that rubric generator. When I was a teacher, the rubric generator was the bane of my existence. I could not deal with rubrics. I was so bad at creating them, and I really wish I'd had a tool like this. So first thing up at the top is this exemplar. So this exemplar, if I click on it, it shows examples of what you should, what's like the level of things you should put in. So we have here, you select your grade level, and then it's giving some very clear standard or objective. Then it's giving the assignment title and as much as you can explain about the assignment in there. And then the point scale. Now, I really like the exemplar because it shows you all of that information. But if you click on it, you kind of need to go through and clear it all. So there's two things that you can do once you've clicked on that exemplar. You can either hide the prompt and just use their exemplar. Just kidding, don't do that. But what you want to do is clear the inputs. Otherwise, the only solution is to actually go through and delete. For most of them, the default text in there is pretty close to what they have, but you can see on their assignment description, their default that's kind of filled in the back. Write a persuasive essay that convinces the reader to change the school policy of your choosing. If I go back to that exemplar, oh, I think I might have upset it because I just went in and out. So let me reload that one. All right, there we go. So if I go, now this is the exemplar one. Remember, the previous one was just like convince someone to change a school board policy. Instead, they changed it to persuade a school board member to approve the building of a park at your school in the neighborhood. So the more details you can include, the better that it's able to help you. This is all kind of that AI prompting idea that you need to be able to give it the information. I like to think of it as, imagine, you know that stage, I think it's like around 2 or 3, where kids just kind of ask the same, like they ask constant questions. They're like, what, why? And then you have to keep explaining and explaining until you get to like, here's the very basic, I don't know how else I can explain this to you. That's kind of how you want to work with AI. The more details, the clearer you can be, the better. So I'm going to clear out these inputs. I'm going to go ahead and put in something similar to what I did. This would be, I'm actually going to use that. Don't judge my spelling. Okay, so this was a project that I used to do. So this was what was it? Imperialism in Africa. So this was a unit I did. Argue. This is where I have to kind of think how they would do it. The long-term effects of imperialism in just in Africa. I'm trying to remember how I did. All right, now that's not a lot of details, so I'm going to include a few more details. All right, so argue the long-term effects of imperialism in Africa, including at least 2 examples from including 2 examples. All right, let's see how that does. Point scale, pretty straightforward. There are those options right there, so I'm going to go the 5-point scale. So additional customization for the rubrics. So this has supporting arguments, and that is exactly, so I will have, be sure, actually, I will steal this part up here, including 2 examples. I will put that here. Be sure to include at least 2 examples. And then I click generate. And now I just wait. All right, so it has some additional content down here. It has filled in some a big overview of this, of what we want. This is where I have the evidence was the request that I put in, and the level 5 is compelling examples versus little to no examples. That's perfect. It has some of that in there, and it's like, cool, that seems great, but it's in here. So now what do I do? There's a few options now that you have this created, because this isn't going to be the final product. Remember, AI does about 80% of the work, creating all of that, even getting some of those basic words in there, trying to remember like the limited, partially clear, clear, and compelling, like that all is just frustrating. But if I wanted to change something, like let's go back, nope, 5 levels was too much, I can drop this down. Let's really just do like 1 out of 3 and then reload it. And I can see, does this have kind of what I'm looking for? It also gives me some suggestions at the bottom. How can I use this rubric to assess my students' argumentative essays? Are there suggestions for improving student performance on evidence of examples criteria? So if I wanted to click one of these, I could. There's also some actions at the bottom. On here, the actions that I have, there's translate, pretty straightforward. It has a lot of different languages. Probably the most helpful, especially if this is a big project and you want to be able to send home, is you can use the translate to Spanish. Now again, this is AI. It will do 80% of the work, and then you need to check it. There are questions. I can use this to then create questions, a multiple choice or a free response. So if I wanted to do that, I could click free response, and it's going to generate 5 questions. This is going to, the way that was framed is it's actually having them reflect on what they did. If I had a rubric that was having them present on something, it's going to give them that way to reflect. I can change. Do I want it longer? Do I want it shorter? I can have it summarize that in a sentence, paragraph, or bullet points. So I can have them put some bullet points. There's pretty much the big idea of what I was looking for. So if the rubric's too much, here's exactly how I want you to do it. Or there are some different ones that I can include. So maybe I want to differentiate. Give me suggestions on differentiation. And there we go. Immediately it's offering here some different ways that I can do it. And it's offering, like, one of the first things is sentence starters. That is exactly what I would do for my students that I needed to differentiate for, was I provided sentence starters. That is now going to ask me, do I want to create those? And it could walk me through that and provide me that information. So all of this stuff, I mean, creating a rubric like that easily would have taken me 30 minutes just to try to, if not more, especially when trying to come up with the right words for this. As not an English teacher, I was never good with rubrics. But I got all of that done in less than 5 minutes, and that's while explaining as I go. So I've got this awesome essay. I have some other resources down here. I can tell the tool if it's a helpful or not. I had my actions at the bottom, which is where I can translate, I can ask questions, I can ask it to do other things. But I want to use this rubric. So what do? I can go into here and I can either copy the resource, save the resource, or my preference, export it. Of course, I'm a Google girl, so I want to do that to Google Docs. So the scope, I can either say, do I want it to do the full thread, like everything we just talked through, it can put all of the information I asked below, or do I just want the selected resource? So that's really nice that even if you asked a bunch of stuff, you don't have to go through and export it one at a time. You can have the full thread. So I can click export. Now, the first time you do this, it is going to require that you actually authenticate and you sign in, give it its permissions. Always give Google whatever permissions it's asking for, as long as it's a trusted tool. And then I can go ahead and open that Google Doc. And there is my essay, my rubric, for me to be able to go in and make changes. It's already put everything in the table. It's got everything there for me, and it even knew, it even knew that that was going to be more than one page. So it's continued and put the same header on the second page, just to make sure that if it's the students only looking up here, that they'd still be able to see it, the headers below. And it has that note at the bottom, which I could remove. I can change any of this. If I wanted to use this as a rubric in Google Classroom, I could then import that as a rubric in Google Classroom. A lot of those steps that were so tedious to try to get through, it just makes it a lot easier. But again, I would need to go through very carefully and double check. One of the things that I know as a teacher I would do, evidence and examples, for 3 points, I would make sure that I have it very clear that this is at least 2 examples. I might bold that, underline. So this one, it says limited examples. I would probably, just because limited is a little unclear to our students, I might do less than 2 examples. That way, I'm very clear. If it's not 2, then you're done. So those are that part where that's the 80-20. I need to come in and take a look. So those features we just went through, the idea of the exemplar where it can show you what's a really good way to use that tool, the ability to copy things out, the action button at the bottom, to be able to send a message, things like that. Those are all going to be embedded in all of the tools. So I'm going to hop back to the presentation slide here. So here, again, there's that exemplar button, and then we filled out those fields. We clicked generate. Once we did that, then it gave us that output. We were able to see what the options were. We look through it, we review. It gave us some suggestions from Raina. Hey, here's what you can do. This is what you can ask Raina. Those are some ideas that you might want to think of. The sentence starters was spot on for what I would have needed. And then it also talks through on this resource the different buttons we clicked through. So to be able to translate, to be able to save your own prompts, we'll talk about that one later, don't worry too much about that. To be able to create resources or to build your own type of question. Now, you might have noticed that this button looked different. Again, they are constantly updating this tool, so don't be too surprised if things might shift slightly. They found that this wasn't as helpful versus having this actions button. So they had prompts. They changed that to actions because that was more clear for humans. And then they were able to kind of add those pieces in. So again, if you have feedback for them, please provide it. They really do listen. We also walked through how to export your material, whether it's to copy. I really love to use Google Docs. If it is an assessment, it will automatically generate it in Google Forms. Love that. So if you went that one of those tools I mentioned with multiple choice, if you have it generated, you can export it right into Google Forms. Just a quick plug, all of Quizzes does allow for import from Google Forms if you're looking to make it a little fun. Anyhow, but the Google Form generation is awesome. And if it is an email, you're using an email tool, it will actually put it in your email. So it puts it where you need it. It doesn't just export it the same way for everything. Okay, so that's how you use those built-in tools. So I'm gonna hop back for a moment. These tools here, they're gonna walk you through everything. It might be, this is what I really like, to generate YouTube video questions. We've all had those days where you're sick, you know you're gonna have a video go on, you really just need some questions so the kids will sit and be quiet for the sub. You can have this watch the video for you and generate them. How great is that? You don't have to put too much effort in. You can just stay, hopefully, calm and be able to put that in. All right, so all of these tools here, they're gonna walk you through what you need to know. I know Michael was just doing some DOK work, so that's a great one to put out here. I really could go through this list. I promise I'm gonna stop that now because there are so many. At the end of this, you are going to be prompted to take a look through those and really figure out which tools might be helpful for you. But I want to make sure we get to some other components. Magic Tools is the top part, but Raina, I feel like she's dressed like a unicorn and I'm all about that. Raina is the built-in AI assistant. So I'm going to hop back here just for a bit. She's been trained on the best educational practices, so you're not just asking a ChatGPT where it may have gotten any type of educational practice, whatever it could find on the web. Raina was specifically fed with certain criteria and certain ways of going about things. Again, I mentioned how Raina and the platform aren't always as up to date. Right now it is at 2001. I know there were, not 2001, gosh no, 2021. I know they're working on that update, but they are very careful and curate what resources Raina has to minimize the bias, to minimize different problems, and also to really make sure that the tool's giving you the best advice. It's as if they're trying to give you a master teacher and looking at what would a master teacher respond with, what would someone who's very good in their profession do. So she's been trained. I'm gonna hop back over. They will always give you some questions that you can ask. You can feel free to ask about ideas for the classroom, whatever you think best practice is. I'm going to ask, let's see, how do I handle a student that doesn't follow the criteria on rubrics? So right away, it's giving multiple options, trying to think what is the best way that you can handle it. They give you some different options, possible consequences, and then it says, it even prompts what might be the next question. Can you give me some strategies of addressing the issue, or are there any resources or tips for effectively using rubrics with students? I really love this because you can see where they spent that time building Raina. Like it doesn't just, it shows you like, hey, maybe your rubric needs some help, and it can prompt you right into asking that question. So it has some great ways of going about there. Now, when you're using Raina, there's some things to keep in mind. I would go ahead, and if you have a moment here, go ahead and ask a question. See if you have one. We'll do something silly. Why is the sky blue? All right, so there is the information about why is the sky blue, but obviously you can ask just about anything, and then it gives you prompts. See, my very simple question, why is the sky blue? And then it's, can you explain the scientific reasoning behind the color of the sky? Much better question than why is the sky blue? What it's trying to do down here is teach you the concept of AI prompting. So even though you're using Raina to get information, Raina's also trying to teach you at the same time. They're showing you effective ways to ask questions so that Raina or the tools can provide the most information and accurately help and address your issues or questions, not necessarily issues. And what that's doing is going through AI prompting. Now, back in the day, not really back in the day, there was the idea of, and there still is, how to put an effective Google search. Now, Google search has now had the ability to have understand human words. It has a whole bunch of AI behind the Google search engine. It's really cool if you ever check it out. But anyhow, think back, if you will. Now, some of you may not be old enough, but for all of us who were there for the start of the internet in school, think back to Ask Jeeves. Ask Jeeves, you had to be very careful how you worded things. And that was true for Google searches at that time. You had to make sure you didn't include too many common words. You had to be very specific on what you requested. And you had some difficulty on really making that search work. I know a lot of people who got very frustrated with either Ask Jeeves or Google search, and they just gave up. And that's true for a lot of people who tried ChatGPT or other AI tools. Once they've tried it, there's a lot of times they don't get what they expect as the response back. And then they think the tool doesn't work. AI is smart, but it can't be intuitive. There's that part of your human brain where you might have watched the conversation happen, you might understand, and you can kind of guess what they're asking and kind of fill in some of the blanks. I know we do it all the time with talking with each other, especially with students. They ask one question, you have to like figure out how they got there. That's not something that AI has. That intuitive brain is not part of it. So instead, you need to be able to do AI prompting, which means you're effectively asking questions that are going to help MagicSchool return the best answer possible. And it is a skill, which is why in here, Raina is constantly trying to give you ideas and help your brain wrap around the idea of prompting. This is a really great way to kind of look at what are ways you can increase your chance of getting back what you want. So their guidelines. The example on the left you can see is kind of vague. Define the role you want AI to assume. Oh, sorry. Not the example on the left, my goodness. Sorry, the guideline on the left is what it recommends you do. The examples are on the right. So if you define the role you want AI to assume, you can begin your prompt. In this case, you are a master 7th grade science teacher. If I didn't put that part in, it may not give me exactly what I'm looking for. And then to give it as much clear information as you can about the task. In this case, it's creating a 5E lesson plan, introductory lesson to mitosis. That's making clear it's an introductory lesson. I have the feeling 5E is a science standard, and it's asking for a full lesson plan, not just an activity, but an actual plan. And then add any important details to make sure your generation matches the output you're looking for. In this case, the lesson should focus on learning the name and the phases of mitosis as well as the order and the phases occur. Mitosis, there is quite a bit you could learn there. So it is giving, this is exactly this part. Because an introductory lesson to mitosis might look different to a high school student versus the 7th grade science. So you need to give it that information so it really knows how to bring back that return what you're looking for. So I'm going to walk through kind of the suggestions it gave here. First is assign Raina a specific role. So I'm going to say, you are a master teacher leading, I'm not sure how she'll do this with it, professional development for other teachers. Okay. Then it tells me, ask Raina to complete a specific task. Create an activity for teachers to learn how to use MagicSchool. Let's see how it does. Include important details Raina needs to make your output match. Include how to do, how to get, where's the word I'm looking for? Trying to think. How to get the best results from Magic School. Don't know how self-aware she is. We're about to find out. I'd say she's pretty self-aware. So here we go. I gave my role I wanted her to take. I gave her what I wanted her to create. And then I included the how to give the best results. So she made sure in here to encourage teachers to ask specific and clear questions, what we just talked about with AI prompting. She said how to introduce it, how to do hands-on exploration, what the best practice is, collaborate and share, Q&A reflection, conclusion, how to summarize. So I knew I needed to ask all of those questions, and that was what helped me get the better answer versus if I said, here we go, can create an activity to learn Magic School. Similar answers, but not always what you would have gotten in by defense. Okay. Oh, here we go. Is there a template for creating educational activities? Can you provide examples of Magic School activities? I like that one. And then it can go ahead and continue on here. My goodness, it's just going to keep going. All right, so a lot of information on the AI prompting. I definitely recommend checking out. The more you learn to ask, the better. In the meantime, though, I highly recommend utilizing the tools because it builds in those questions. This information that you have to remember to put in where it's asking what's the role, what do you want it to do, give details, it builds it into those. If you remember back to the rubric generator, I asked, what's the role? 9th grade, it's asking like what teaching, what's the standard, what's the assignment, give me the description. It's asking for all of those details built in, and that's why those tools are there to help kind of scaffold the whole AI process. Okay, so we tried our AI prompting. This is where I'm going to pause the video. I will put a video up a little bit about this. I'm not sure you really need my help, but I will share just because I find it, I want you to kind of see how I think about it. But this is your scavenger hunt. Explore and favorite tools that you would find the most save you the most time during the day. Again, there are 60 tools, so it's going to take you some time to scroll through all of those. I'd like you to try to test out at least 3 of the tools that you think would be helpful. If you already know a task that you want that tool to do, try it out. Find a tool that helps you support students with varying abilities. If that applies to your position, so if you are a teacher, definitely check that out. If that is not something that applies to you, you can skip that one. Last one, find a tool that can make you laugh. All right, so this is where you're going to pause the video, and then you are going to complete the scavenger hunt. Remember, you have this slide deck, so if you wanted to pull this up in front of you, you can do that. I am going to cheat, so you can either pause the video or you can see what my favorite tool is. My favorite tool, I mentioned it before, is the teacher jokes generator. I would definitely make sure to favorite that one. I would pull it up, ask what's the grade level. I'm going to go, let's go 11th grade. What do I want my question to be about? Make it about AI becoming self-aware. I don't know how well it'll do that. All right, so ending on a joke. Why did the AI become a stand-up comedian? Because it finally realized that laughter is the best algorithm for happiness. What did the self-aware AI say when it won the comedy competition? I guess you could say I'm the biggest comedian around. Oh man. Sorry, I love these jokes. Why did the AI start telling jokes? Because its creator said it needed to lighten up and add a bit of humor to its neural network. So there's my favorite one. I sometimes just need a good laugh, and that's a great one to go to. All right, so there's my tool that I find. Obviously sharing my joke. But take this time now to go ahead and explore, and I hope you find at least a few tools that you find helpful.